This is the Spritz Girl Mindset Podcast, and I'm your host, Courtney Young. If girlhood is a mindset, this is where we practice it out loud and unfiltered. We're healing, we're yapping, and we're doing it with spritzes in hand. Here's your permission slip to be soft, messy, and magnetic as hell. So grab a spritz, grab a seat, no small talk, just the real stuff. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Spritz Girl Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Young. This week's episode is a reminder that sometimes rock bottom gives us a front row seat to who we really are. Today, I'm sitting down with Candice Michelle, someone who turns stillness into self-awareness, pain into purpose, and introspection into radical connection. She's 39, Canadian, a former pro makeup artist who had her whole world cracked open after a car accident that forced her to slow down and start asking some really hard questions. Why did her childhood feel so heavy? Why did she feel unlovable? And why, in a world full of people, was she so alone? In the aftermath, she didn't just do the inner work. She became the ultimate people person by learning to connect with herself first. Through the Enneagram, boundaries, deep emotional healing, and a whole lot of self-compassion, she found her way back to herself. And now she helps others do the same as an Enneagram coach and my favorite Enneagram too. In this episode, we talk about self-awareness as the first act of self-love, using the Enneagram for real healing, not just personality labels, boundaries that protect your peace and your people, and what girlhood teaches us about friendship, worthiness, and belonging. This one is tender, empowering, and full of moments that will make you want to text your therapist and your best friend. So grab a spritz and let's get into it. Hello.
Hello, hello.
I'm so
Mostly.
excited you're here, Candice.
Excited to be here, finally. Well, I'm Candice. Hi. Nice to meet you all. I'm an Enneagram 2. I'm an Enneagram coach. I'm in my late 30s. So I feel like there's lots of life changes that go on at the end of decades. But to make it like a long story short, I was a former pro makeup artist. I used to travel North America with pretty high-end brands. I used to love doing that. And then one day I was in a car accident, which left me alone with a whole lot of time to understand myself, understand my life, understand my circumstances, and understand how I could move forward after such a heavy event. And now I'm here using my Enneagram 2 helperness for good, hopefully, and helping everyone do the same.
I love that. This is definitely going to be a lot of Enneagram in this podcast, which I'm so excited about because it is one of my hyperfixations. So I'm like a big fan. So you're a 2. Can you explain like what a type 2 is for anyone who maybe doesn't know?
So Enneagram 2s are, to kind of give you a little bit of background, Enneagram is based on what's motivating you, what is like your core fear. And it generally is behind like everything we do. So as an Enneagram 2, I am motivated by being liked, loved, wanted, needed. That is just, it's genuinely behind everything I do, even down to the point where like if I get mail from the mailman, I'm like, I need the mailman to like me. And it's a lot of fun. I like being an Enneagram 2, but I feel like I didn't in the beginning, but maybe that's part of the whole Enneagram journey. Like you learn your type and you're like,
Yeah. So I always say Enneagram is a motivation-based personality assessment because it's not really about personality, but a lot of people have this misconception when it comes to the Enneagram where they're like, oh, I'll take the test and the test is going to tell me my type. And what I always like to clarify is, well, the test itself is only 50% accurate and it should be used as a launching point because you can't really test for motivation and fear. You can only test for personality.
amen. That's brilliant, because you could be in a season of stress when you're testing.
Right.
You could have been in a really clear moment and not realize it. So there's all these different factors. Even subtypes break it down into that. So you're totally right. Like it's that launch pad. And to add to that, I would say take your top 3 scoring numbers if you're going to take a test and then bear down from there. Eventually you will resonate because it's all about you and your perception. No test, no person, no coach can tell you who you are.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's so funny because for the longest time, I used to host an Enneagram podcast and I, for years, thought I was an Enneagram 2. Through and through on a personality basis, that is what I thought. But coming out of high school, I tested as a 1. And that makes total sense to me because growing up my own journey with my parents and everything like that, I was super in a season of stress. I'm very grounded by like rules. So like I was very black and white. I never leaned into gray. And then in college, it almost like shifted and I became very like people pleasing, wanting to find my people, wanting to mask, wanting to fit in all the time. And it wasn't until I did some really deep internal work and got down to the bottom of it and really dug into like subtypes specifically, because subtypes are the pinnacle of where it gets so confusing. And it's also like where so much truth is. But I
Yes.
actually had Beatrice Chestnut on my podcast, and she had said twos, when they are, struggling or when they're like kind of going through it, they can tend to be a little bit more manipulative. And sixes are very like logic based and they're head center first and not heart center. And so then that got me kind of thinking like, well, maybe I am not a two because I definitely think with my head before I think with my heart. And I try very hard not to be manipulative. Not that that's a bad thing, but I have my own, I have my inner committee bullshit that I be dealing with all the time. And so I dug into that social subtype of a six and it was like, oh, well, social sixes can look a lot like ones, can look a lot like twos. And that's when I was like, okay, yeah, the thing that I care about is abandonment and not rejection. And those are very subtle differences, very subtle.
Yes.
But it's abandonment.
Yeah, right. And then it's the why behind the abandonment, right? Because we can both use the term abandonment all day long, right? Like we can both feel not wanting to be abandoned and we can both feel not wanting to be rejected.
Yeah.
But it's the why behind it, right? Because for me, it tells me that if someone leaves, which could be viewed as rejection or abandonment or whatever word we want to use, it's going to tell me that I'm not worthy of love, right? That's that I'm not a necessary person. And I don't want to speak for you. I'm going to speak for my six clients that I've had in general, where it's like, for them, it's more, it just kind of shakes the stability and it makes the thought process go.
Yes. Yes. If I had to be really honest and like dig really quickly, my gut instinct is, oh my God, am I in trouble?
Right.
Am I in trouble? Like, I don't want to be in trouble. That's where my anxiety starts like sending off. And like, I think about that in the context of like jobs I've had in the past, where it's like, I don't like making mistakes because if I make a mistake, then I feel like I'm going to be fired or like I'm going to like lose my sense of stability. I'm going to have to figure it out. I don't like the plan changing. I want the plan to plan and I want to feel safe and supported by my people within my plan.
Love that. That makes so much sense too. It does. That makes a ton of sense. And I love that you did see yourself as a two to begin with, right? Because it makes me so happy to hear that that wasn't enough for you. You know what I mean? Like you were like, it feels like me, but in what I'm getting, and again, please me if I'm wrong, what I'm getting is that like there had to have been some sort of this doesn't quite fit like a glove to make you go deeper. And that to me is really what Enneagram's all about. Like, yes, we love these personality tests. We love these memes. And I love memes. Like I make memes. Like I feel like I say memes and it sounds like I'm trying to be negative and maybe that's just my tunus talking, but it's just, they can have people be complacent with what represents them.
Right.
So hearing that you were like, yeah, this sounds like me, but, and you know what, even that is six all over it.
I also feel like, Instagram, you have to, when you're following Enneagram coaches, and I think you're a great example because all of your content before I even knew you is constantly challenging people to like get into the shit of it, which is what I really appreciate. I think it's one of the reasons we really connect. But a lot of these other accounts, it's very much like the personality level. Some of that stuff is great and it's a great launching point, but you have to be very careful because again, I thought I was a two for years based off of things I saw on Instagram. It was not until I was willing to do that internal work and get into the shit of it that I realized, oh, I'm not a two. Now I have two in my tri-type. That's a whole other conversation. But it's a launching point. It's not the end all be all. And I always tell people too, like you have to look at the fear. The fear tends to be where it's like easiest for people to really start to have those conversations.
It's a great point to start. And it can be a great point to challenge people. And I love that you said I challenge people because that's part of my human design, but it's also, you mentioned growing up like in the stress a little bit. I feel like I heard you say that. I don't want to make that up. I did the same. So with 8 being my stress, I carry a lot of challenging in me. Like I'm going to challenge you when I'm in my healthiest, not in my healthiest per se, but when I'm doing well and I'm in a higher level and I'm averaging out there, I'm able to use that challenge to help, I think, as best as I can. So yeah, I mean, I like that I don't know where that came from.
So we've talked about the car accident like a little bit. Can you kind of take us back to that version of you before that as like the makeup artist traveling? Like what was your life like? Who did you think you were? And then like what shifted for you?
My life on paper looked perfect. I had worked my way up from like part-time Christmas help at Sephora to working for brands within 3.5 years.
That's so
And
cool.
like it was crazy. Like it felt really crazy and it felt really good. It felt really ego driven.
Yeah.
It didn't at the
Mhm.
time though, right? Like I was just like, this is validating me. Like this is validating me. My social subtype is secondary for me, but it was really the ego side of that subtype was really inflated. I had felt like I was trying to prove myself and prove myself and prove myself. And because I was stressed working in the store and I kept feeling like I needed to challenge again and keep feeling like everyone in the store was talking about me and all of these really weird betrayal type of feelings.
Yeah.
So when I got that boost and I went from store level to corporate kind of level, I was just like blown up. I was like this hot air balloon of a person, really and truly. But I was, and in learning over the past 7 years about the Enneagram and myself and the subtypes and the levels, I was living in those lower levels
Mm.
and I just had no idea. And I was walking around thinking I was so self-aware. Like I would have yearly reviews for my job and my boss was in Boston. So it would be like a half personal review and like they would do like their thoughts on it. So I would rank myself really, really high of like how I reacted to change, how I dealt with stress, how I dealt with conflict. And then she would be like, really though? Are you sure about that? So like I saw myself as the best at what I was doing. I saw myself as someone who had nothing to improve upon other than her status in life. I saw myself as someone who was being screwed over
Mm.
constantly. Right around the accident, 6 months prior, we had called off a wedding. So there's like a lot going on. But looking back, I'm like, most of that was me.
So much of what you just said, I really, really resonated with in a different context. I very much get into that burnout, that constantly pushing myself, not doing things out of a place of alignment, but doing them out of a place of feeling like I have to. So when you're talking about that ego boost, I totally
Hmm.
feel that in a completely different way. And it's why I took such a pause from starting doing this podcast because it was like, I know if I do this right now, it's not going to be aligned with what I actually want it to be. And it's going to come from a place of just stress. And I need to be in a place where I feel aligned and I feel like myself and not feel like I need to be the best or I need to have it all figured out. And it's so hard to tap into those levels of awareness and really see yourself in that, especially when people like you and me, we want to make other people happy. For me, I don't want to take the focus off of other people long enough to be aware to look at myself because it's easier
Mm.
for me to think about you and how you're feeling and how I can help you than it is to look at myself. So if I can just focus on you, I don't have to look at my own shit. And it takes some real humble pie to be able to sit there and like do that work, but it's such important work to do. So I can imagine how hard that was for you in that season.
Yeah. But I mean, also hearing from you that you can recognize that in yourself. Like everyone who's listening, that is what Enneagram work looks like. That is all it is. It doesn't have to be this whole production. It's noticing that you're doing something and it maybe isn't for the reasons you really want to be doing it for.
Yes.
That's it.
How would you describe life for you now? Like what shifted? How are you feeling about where you're at currently? Like I know that's a broad question.
It is, but it also isn't. I feel like an entirely different person. I do feel like a different person. And then, but at the same time, I had this chat on my podcast a few weeks ago with a different Enneagram coach, the Enneagram guide on Instagram, Evie, and she had mentioned something. She was like, those versions of Evie are still there. And that landed with me so well. I do feel like a whole different person, but 25-year-old Candice still comes out and she's still there and she's still hurting and she still feels like her only way to protect herself because 25-year-old me is in stress. She
Mm.
feels like the only way to protect herself is to use her sexual prowesses as a sexual dominant Enneagram 2 but she's just constantly getting rejected because she's this full-on pick me. So it's a very interesting place to be. I don't want to say post work because I don't believe work necessarily ever ends. And I don't want that to sound daunting. I mean it to sound freeing. It's just very interesting to be able to carry those two sides of myself simultaneously and allow space for them and to notice when I'm treating her in a way that I wouldn't treat anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think a lot about inner child and soul child work too. And similarly, I think about the version of Courtney even 10 years ago that was very involved in the church and was constantly pushing herself to be the very best and to be the best leader and was still constantly being told, you're not good enough or you're too annoying to ever lead. And like I roll my eyes at it now, but
Well, it's not you, it's them. Like, how could
right.
they say something like that? That's crazy.
So crazy. And it happens all the time to so many different people. I've heard so many stories. These conversations were happening when I was between like 18 and 21. And I turned 30 in June. By the time this comes out, I will be older than 30. I will be 30. So, but I think about 18 to 21-year-old Courtney and I think about her all the time. And then I think about like 13-year-old Courtney, who is dealing with her dad and the way that he was treating her mom and the role that she had to play as the eldest daughter. And so there's so many different versions of you, and they all make up a part of who you are. And you have to honor each of those because forgetting them is not really doing the work. It's just disassociating and it's pretending you're not who you actually are.
Exactly. It was such a fine line for me to figure out. You know, my defense mechanism as a two is repression. So I tend to not know how to feel my feelings. Add in being a Capricorn moon, and it's just like cut it all out. But, you know, it was trying to find that line of feeling my feelings and not using my feelings as a tool to manipulate people, like you had said earlier, right?
I always say too that the journey is just as important as the destination. So when you say the work is never really done, well, that's because as long as we're living, we're always going to be on the journey. And you have to be able to tap into that and learn from it and grow from it and share your story. And that's how we become the best versions, the most elevated versions of ourselves is by genuinely knowing who we are. And I think about a life where like I don't find interest in doing that work and it makes me sad because it's just a disassociated version of who I'm called to be, and who I'm called to be as
Mhm.
someone who is helping people, who is coaching people, who is guiding people. But also, when you think about that question, who are you? One of the things I constantly am telling my clients is tell me who you are without telling me what you do for other people.
Good one.
Because most people don't know how to answer that. And it's like, okay, well, how do we start to answer that? We start to answer it by looking at our own journey and our own story and talking about the things that make us who we are.
Absolutely. And just by being, right? Like how do we be throughout the day? And that now I'm going to be thinking about that.
Speaking of like self-awareness, I'm a big proponent of it being the first act of self-love, like kind of like what you had said previously. But what would you say to women who are currently in their 20s, 30s, early 40s about starting to feel stuck or questioning their sense of identity? What would you say to that?
You are in full control. And I mean that to say, again, in a way that is meant to be empowering. So you
Right.
can take that, and even just how you're taking that statement will answer how self perceptive you are, how open and willing you are to be. Because when someone tells you that you're in full control, but you don't feel that way, you can feel that way. That's valid. Like, totally, you don't feel like you're in control. I get that. Talk to me 5 years ago. I lived in 13 houses in the last 6 years. Like it's been an insane time. You couldn't look at me and tell me I was in control.
Right.
But what I was in control of was my perception of circumstances, my reaction to the circumstances, how I chose to deal with the circumstances, how I chose to love myself through the circumstances. So, as stuck as you may feel, there is always something that you are in control of, that you can kind of take that empowering. And if you need a visual, I'm a very metaphor-y person. So, whatever it is, I want everyone out there to just kind of think about how they're feeling stuck right now, because I guarantee like all of us are feeling stuck in some way. And if you're not, please tell me your magic. But here's a bit of mine, maybe it'll help a little bit, is picture your whole life as this vending machine. You've got situations, you've got family, you've got people, and there's something that you can't control and it's driving you crazy. That's what you're holding on to in the vending machine, right? So just picturing yourself letting go of that And even though that may feel like you're letting go of control, that's actually you regaining it. Because when you are grasping onto something else, it's controlling you.
Yes. Yes. I love that. As a six, when you first said that, I was like, I don't like that.
I didn't think you would.
I'm like, I don't like that. I don't want to be in control. I've always said, and this is the work I'm currently doing. One of the biggest things, like if I'm being totally vulnerable, totally honest, one of the biggest things that held me back from starting this podcast was I had this idea in my head that it is my job to be like a second in command or a supporter rather than a leader. And I just
Mm-hmm.
never seen myself as a leader. I've never seen myself as somebody who like can set the tone. And so for me, it's like that's been work I've had to do. I had to let go of that insecurity and let go of the fact that, like, sure, I'm going to fuck it up sometimes. Like, I'm not going to get it perfect. And there are going to be things that I say that people might not resonate with. And that's not the point. The point is that we're sharing our authentic stories and being true to who we are. And people will always resonate with you for that. They don't care about
Yes.
woo woo or the chat GPT or the like whatever. They care about knowing you, and your people will always find you. But like you just said, like I was holding on to that so tightly, that idea of like, well, I have to be the best motivational speaker, or I have to have the following, or I have to whatever. It's like, no, just let that go and put yourself out there.
Yes. And that's so, I love that you said that. And thank you for sharing that with me, because when I speak with a lot of sixes, they don't feel fear. Like they don't really feel scared. So
Yeah.
when we blast out there that sixes are fearful, it can make them skeptical. It can make them question us and make them question the whole system, right? It's one of those things where I think the word control has a really negative connotation. And I think the word fear does as well. Like we look at them as like negative things that we need to get away from. And maybe that's just my positive outlook triad, I don't know. But um there's all different ways that we all try to control, because why wouldn't we want to be in control of our lives? So, to anybody who's listening and they're like, I'm not trying to control my life. I don't know what's going to happen. Or I'm not trying to control my life. I'm just trying to have something to look forward to. Those are forms of control. They are not negative. They are just neutral. It's just they're you trying to control your experience here. And that's not a bad thing. So thank you for opening that up.
My God, yeah. Fear is definitely something I did not resonate with. When I was looking at like basic Enneagram content in the very beginning, when I decided I was a two, all I would see about sixes was anxiety and fear. And those words just don't really resonate with me. And they didn't resonate with me as much as like the people pleasing and the wanting to make everybody happy stuff did. So looking at it from that level, that is what I latched onto. For me, it's not necessarily about fear. That didn't resonate. But what does resonate is I will often use the phrase like, I'm not optimistic, but I'm not pessimistic. I'm realistic.
Yes.
I'm actually very pessimistic. Like, if I'm being really honest with myself, like, I am a skeptic. I'm going to question everything. I want full clarity before I make any move. And so, like, that doesn't, to me in my brain, necessarily feel like it's coming from a place of fear, but it does feel like it's coming from a place of I need to feel safe. I
Mm-hmm.
just hate describing it that way. Like I need to know, like, okay, stupid example. My friend Megan, best friend, love her. We go to emo shows together all the time. And normally I'm the kind of person, I'm going to look up the set list of a concert before going to the concert. And I had said to her, because we're going to Mayday Parade on Thursday, excited. It's the second show. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be really brave and I'm going to go into this blind because I never do that. And she was like, Courtney, I literally go into every concert blind. And she was like, why wouldn't you? And I said, well, I don't know. Like, I want to feel prepared. I want to know the songs that are going to be played. Like, I just don't want to feel caught off guard. And she goes, why would you feel caught off guard at a concert? And I'm
Like, you know who you're going to see, you know what their songs are.
I just want to know. It's the same reason I read spoilers for reality TV.
Those are all like, that's all my absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I want to read the spoilers. I want to know, because for me, it's like I love The Bachelor. So I'll read the spoilers for what happens on The Bachelor. And then I'm like, ooh, I'm watching it with a new, interesting lens because I know what's going to happen. So it's like, I don't know, kind of almost the gossip, the knowing the why behind everything, the feeling connected, like that really resonates with me and that I can get behind. But those are like surface level examples of where I do that shit. I do it all the time in real life too.
Yeah. And I mean, like, there's always a deeper to the surface, right? Because the surface isn't just floating there. It's not, there's something holding it up always, no matter how, little it might be. And, like, I'm the same as your friend, right? Like, I don't want to know the set list. Like, I didn't look at any Eras Tour stuff until the movie came out.
Oh my,
Like I like all of I didn't want to know the surprise songs. I didn't want to know anything. I wanted to experience that feeling of having it
mm,
and absorbing it and like but I understand like where you're coming from. I used to be really into Big Brother, like really
mhm.
problematically into Big Brother. And there was an app and I can't remember what it was called, but it was just people who would trade off and they would watch the live feeds and just type it.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's what I would do because, Veto would be on whatever, like Wednesday or Thursday, but they would actually do it on Monday. So I would be like, I would want to know everything, but I noticed that it was actually making my viewing experience less enjoyable
Mm,
because I was spending more time thinking than I was watching.
interesting.
And that's just how it happened for me in the long run. And I was like, well, it's kind of losing its fun because I know what's going to happen. And
Right.
then I'm getting mad at them for not showing everything. That's my 8 coming out, right? So it's it's interesting how different we can all be with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, and for me with the Eras Tour, I was on TikTok every single night watching the surprise songs. My husband would get so mad because I would literally just start screaming if one I liked would come on. He's like, "Stop screaming. We live in a small house. I don't want to hear it."
Yep, I would go on Twitter, like that would be the only reason I'd open it because gross. But I would open it and there was this one thing and they'd be like, and she's performing this one and she's performing this one. And all like the only reason I was doing it was this is a very two thing. So I was trying to see if her and Maddie were sending each other messages.
Yeah, not the Maddie Healy of it all. I can't.
We could have a whole different conversation on that. We
We
should.
have had this conversation on the Joe Alwyn versus the Travis Kelsey of it all.
Oh, let's go.
We're at opposite ends of the playing field on that one.
That,
Okay, so we've talked a lot about accountability, but for someone who's never thought about accountability as love, like how would you kind of redefine that for them?
like accountability is love.
Yeah.
Woo, that is good. That is good because when you're accountable, not only with yourself, but with other people, you're saying that you want the relationship to continue.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds weird to say about yourself, but we are our closest relationship. We're with ourselves every single day. If we can't be honest with ourselves about why, how, what, like all of these things, how can we expect ourselves to be honest with other people? And how can we expect it back?
Yeah.
Like, because I find with myself and quite a few of my clients, we tend to expect ourselves out of other people. And that usually comes with like the average levels, right? Like we're living in personality. We're like, we expect everyone to be like us and we don't understand why other people aren't. But yeah, it's giving yourself a great big hug and saying, I love you, even though
Yeah.
dot, dot, dot.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you just said. And for me, I think about how much harder life was when I was living this masked version of myself all the time, constantly. And, part of that, some of that is we can't help it. If you have any level of neurospicy ADHD, like that's just going to be something that you're going to have to learn to, live with and navigate and honor in a different way. And that's a journey I had to go through. But for me, one of my biggest grievances was in college, I had these friends that I was so close with. Right? This is back when I thought I was like a 2 and I was in the church doing all the things and I was living this version of myself that at my core I knew I wasn't. And so then when I started challenging those things and asking hard questions, particularly around like shit that is happening in the church, like, hey, how are you going to sit here and say like we love everyone and then exclude half the population? Or like, hey, like people can drink and talk about Jesus and talk about accountability and like have those conversations. Like those things both can be true.
Mhm.
That started getting challenged. It was like, well, you've changed and we don't like that and da da da. And I remember being so frustrated and upset about it. And it wasn't until I really dug in and did the work that I was able to let that go and forgive those people because I was like, but that whole time I was living a masked version of myself. So they became friends with an idea of me and not who I really was. And that's not fair to them. And it's also not fair to me. I wasn't honoring myself in those relationships. I don't blame them for feeling betrayed or for feeling hurt because they thought they knew me and they didn't because I didn't know me and I wasn't willing at that point to do the work to know me.
I don't even want to say anything. That was just so brilliant. Completely rendered, like bow down to all. Like that was yeah, it's so true. And that's accountability. Accountability isn't attack. Like we can often feel like we're being blamed for issues. Just accountability without shame. That's what to me personality neutrality is. It's like, I know I do this. I know that this happened. I know I did this. And they expected a different person out of me. and I was giving them that person. So to them, I changed.
Right.
To me, shed his skin, right? So I just loved all of that.
I feel like shame is something that so many people are like scared to touch because it's so like it requires some level of emotional resiliency because again, you have to be willing to like be authentic and like really get into the shit of it. And I would encourage everyone like tap into your shame, tap into those things that make you scared. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that by yourself, like, find your trusted people. I always talk about like the motto of this podcast is to empower people to be the ultimate people person. That doesn't mean liking and pleasing everyone. That means leaning into your own authentic story and being able to connect with everybody because you value and care about theirs. So, like, how do we do that? We are authentic. We get into the shit of our like stories. We share that authentically. I don't want to say we don't mask because again, there are times where it's necessary to do so, but we are comfortable enough with who we are that we know when we're masking and when we're not masking, and we can share that authentically with others.
100%.
Okay, we'll tap into something more fun now.
No, that was all fun. This is all fun. Are you kidding?
Me too, but okay, wings. Controversy around wings. Lay it on me because I had a moment when you were talking about like your two-ness and you're like wanting to climb the social ladder. My immediate instinct was, oh, that's like a three-wing, which right. And I'm with you and having lots of conversations with you. I've leaned into this theory now too. But back then, you know, when I first started getting into Enneagram, wings were a really easy way that I would describe stuff to people. So I'm curious as to why you don't really love them. What's the beef behind them? Like, let's go there.
Exactly what you just said. It's because it was the easy way. And I feel like it stunts people. It puts them in a place where they feel aware of themselves, but they're not because they don't really know where shit's coming from. They just know that it relates to something that they might have seen in passing online.
Okay.
So like anytime, and I'm going to like literally every single time I've talked to someone about a wing, I've been able to trace it to something else. And I've been able to trace it to someone else, right? And the biggest thing that has come from it is that it makes people think that their type can't be a certain way. Yeah. And the wings I hear people say the most is sixes. I hear six. They're like, I have such a strong 7 wing. My 7 wing is crazy strong. And I'm like, okay, why? Like, I like having fun. Sixes don't like having fun. This is very controversial because I know a lot of coaches do use wings, and I'm not going to detract from what they use because I don't know how they're using them. But I'm going to say for people who are using Enneagram in passing and you're pulling your wing to describe you, it tells me nothing.
Yeah. I feel like when you're first getting into the Enneagram, you should really only be focusing on that motivation versus fear because it's so easy to fall into. I mean, technically, if we want to really get into it, like you can relate to so many different numbers on the Enneagram on a personality level. Like as a 6, my stress number is 3, my growth number is 9, my tri-type is 629. Like I can have a wing of 7 or a wing of 5. So what does that mean? That means the only numbers that I don't necessarily have a direct connection to are 1 or 8.
I was going to say that's what I find interesting because I don't see wings as having any direct connection because there's no line. They're just beside each other. Yeah. There's literally a big gap of 0 connection.
Yeah.
It just happens to be beside us. So it's kind of like the way I see it is like you've got peanut butter and jelly beside each other in the cupboard. That's the word. And you've got Nutella on the other side, right? So basically the peanut butter is deciding if it's more jam or more Nutella. That's what it's doing. You're not more jam or more Nutella. What I want to know is, are you crunchy or smooth? Yeah. Like, how are you smoothing out on the bread?
Yes.
Interesting. Maybe I'm hungry.
Yeah. Analogy though. And I feel like if you like subtypes, if you can, I don't know, I would love for people to shift the focus from wings to subtypes first.
100%.
Especially because subtypes, like those can change throughout like your time. And like, there have definitely been times where I've been a self-preservation 6, but if I look at me through and through, I'm a social 6, like, you know, and it's right? Like that I feel like gives more like freedom and more groundwork and more language than wings kind of do. Wings,
it really does.
Experience I've only found make things more confusing. Because then every time I have a conversation with somebody and they want to talk about like, they'll ask me, okay, like explain the Enneagram to me in this way. Or, okay, am I a 8-wing 7 or an 8-wing 9? And it's like, okay, but like you need to understand what the 8 is before you commit to any number, because what makes you not a 7 or not a 9 then?
Exactly. Right. And it's based on a limited amount of information. It comes from a place and again, this word is not negative, but ignorance. It's just not having the information. That's all that that is. It's not like when we talk about wings, and I did this for years. Like I was constantly focused, like, wait, am I a one wing? Am I more obsessed with ethics and this, and that? Or am I more obsessed with being seen? But what was happening is I was bouncing from house to house, trying to figure out where I was going to live, trying to figure out where my next meal came from. And suddenly I was using my self-preservation subtype that had been so repressed since childhood. So this whole time I'm looking for something outside of myself to fix me. And that isn't what Enneagram's about to me. It's all about looking within, right? Like if we look at the subtypes, and like you said, we can rearrange those. Like they're not static. Right. Now, do we often lean on one the most and one secondary? And usually without work, one is barely used? Yes. But they do shift and they can come out in different situations. That inside of us, like if we're a circle, that's inside. Right. The wings are over here. And those 9 levels of development, those are all inside. Our defense mechanisms are inside. Our how we deal with people, how we deal with conflict. There's way too much within us to be worried about who's next door.
Yeah. I honestly feel like the wings allow you to focus on the personality, like surface level stuff of the Enneagram, whereas like you're saying, all this other stuff requires actual internal digging and internal work.
Yes. And you could be wrong with the wing, right? Like I was wrong. I was constantly telling myself that my hardworking or my desire to have, social status and influence, I was like, I have such a strong 3-wing. But for the longest time, I'm like, I'm just going to keep using my 3-wing. My 3-wing gets me out of bed in the morning. That's not fair to my 2-ness. Like, that's not nice. Yeah. That's telling me that I'm not enough on my own.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. I love that theory. Period.
Yay. I like anybody who's listening, I apologize to you if you've ever messaged me and been like, yeah, I have a strong blank wing and I've lost my
pretty sure one of the first conversations that we had. And then I was like, oh, I like this girl.
Bless. Sometimes I can't hold it back.
But again, that's being authentic. It's being true to who you are. Sure. Like, I love that about you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about friendship and building emotional intimacy and those kinds of things. What do you wish women knew about themselves earlier in life?
I think I'm going to boil it down to the simplest 3 words I can think of, which is you are enough.
Yes.
So like you don't have to constantly be editing yourself. Like you don't have to constantly be thinking if you're showing up correctly. You don't have to learn everyone else's likes for you to be likable. Like you don't have to do all of these things that aren't inherent to you to be worthy of existing.
Yeah, I think so often we fall into this trap of just like people pleasing and again thinking about what everybody else has to say or how they view us before we look at how we view us and what we have to say.
Have you seen Hamilton?
Have I seen Hamilton?
Bless your soul. Hamilton was my number 1 song of last year.
I know.
But, fabulous. So if you stand for nothing, Burr, what do you fall for?
Yes. Period. Yes.
That's it. And you don't have to stand for a cause. You don't have to stand for other people. And this coming from a 2, we don't have to be what we do for people. We can stand for ourselves. Yeah. Whether it's saying no to something we don't want to do, being like, you know what, I'm hungry now. I don't want to wait till you want to eat dinner. Like very simple things that as women, which maybe men are listening being like, what the hell are you talking about? Why would you? But like, those are little things we think of. No. Stand for yourself.
Yeah. Going off of Hamilton, For It is my favorite song in the whole show. And I feel like it resonates with me so hard at the 6. Like,
I love that.
I'm going to wait for it. Like life doesn't reciprocate. It takes. Like, why are you just standing there? Like, go do the thing. Like all day. Musical theater in general, I could talk all day. But
I have Rent lyrics tattooed.
Oh my gosh, no way. Dear Evan Hansen is probably my favorite show. Dear Evan Hansen and Waitress are my favorite shows of all time.
I've never seen.
They're so good.
Waitress is actually playing like 10 minutes down the road from me right now.
You absolutely should go.
Probably go.
Yeah, she used to be if I want to put on a song that's going to make me feel something, if I need to sit there and like cry and I know I need to cry and I can't bring myself to do it, I put on She Used to Be Mine from Waitress. And like, I feel like that taps into like exactly what we're just talking about with the like, you are enough. Like she is messy, but she's kind. She is lonely most of the time. She is all this mixed up and baked in a beautiful pie. She's gone, but she used to be mine. It's such a song of honoring those past versions of yourself while like being excited for like what's to come. You absolutely have to go see that show. It is so good. It is the ultimate story of just like girlhood and finding yourself in the midst of, again, like we can't control what happens to us. I get chills talking about it. It's so good. Speaking of people pleasing, so like I said earlier, goal of my podcast is to empower people to become the ultimate people person. So connect authentically, lean into the power of our own stories, everything like that. My question for you, and particularly as a two and as a coach, how do you think we do that without people pleasing?
Accountability. And I know that's like not something that people are going to want to hear.
Yeah.
It's because for us to be people without, trying to please them and fawn all over them, we have to be accountable ourselves as we're doing it. We have to notice that something is tricked within us. Something is telling us that like we need to do exactly what this person says for us to be, safe, or we need to do a certain thing so this person will still like us. But those, again, statements in them of themselves aren't bad. But as long as we can be accountable with ourselves that they're happening, then we can stop the people pleasing before it starts.
Yeah.
Or while it's happening, or shortly after, because all three options are still stopping it. So It's never too late. It's never too late to just be like, I'm going to be accountable to myself today. This is how I feel right now.
What do you think is like a good first step for that? For somebody who's hearing like accountability, like for somebody like me who, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have known where to start with that. Like, what do you think is like a great, easy, like, how can we start to be accountable to ourselves, to other people?
For sure, Enneagram. And that seems pretty vague. It really does depend on the person. So accountability for me starts with self discovery and doing it through a neutral lens. So just really digging into the Enneagram and even just pick one focus. I know you mentioned focusing on the motivations and fears. That is a huge place to focus. I love focusing there. I like to also add the vice and the defense mechanism, just because those two things really start to come out at like level 5, which is where most of us average out. So to know what those words are, knowledge is power, right? Like 5 is my head try type. I don't know if you could tell.
No.
Like, let's just fill our brains with more knowledge. That'll help. Like giving yourself those labels, letting yourself understand what they mean, and then starting to really look at your life. And that may seem like, okay, well, how do I do that? That would be, again, not an answer that a 6 wants to hear, but how do you do it? You try different things. Maybe you journal. Maybe the journal doesn't work for you. Maybe you set a time every 5 minutes and you meditate. Maybe you wake up in the morning and you do morning pages. Maybe you, like you said, you have a trusted friend. You go to the gym, you run for 10 minutes. You have a trusted friend that you reach out to and you be like, hey, you have an agreement though. Obviously, we don't trauma dump on people with it.
Absolutely not.
But like you have this agreement where it's like, hey, I'm doing this thing where I'm trying to be more accountable with myself. I want to tell you certain situations that have happened. Can you give me how you see it and tell me what I'm missing? And if you trust that person and if you have faith in that person and you have faith that they're coming with you in good faith with good intentions and to love like the way we're coming from, then you can start that accountability process pretty quickly. Because, for example, you come to me and you ask me to do that, I'm going to do it. And like, I'm going to do it in a nice way, but I'm going to do it and I'm going to tell you.
Yeah,
and
be honest.
That right there, whoever it may be that's telling you these things, maybe it's your mom, your best friend, whoever it might be, the second you start to be like, oh, they're just saying that because, or oh, they're wrong, or oh, that's not my type, that right there is telling you there's no accountability. And again, not bad.
Right.
It's just how to start. The only way to start is to start. It's to know where that starting line is. It's to know, like, give yourself a place. So pick one thing in the Enneagram. I don't care what it is at this point. Just pick something. Start noticing it in yourself.
Where to start, like, this is what coaching is for, right? This is like Candice is an amazing Enneagram coach. So absolutely use her as a resource. I do group coaching, not necessarily Enneagram specific, but I do have my own group coaching groups. So like there are absolutely, if you are out there, you're hearing this conversation, you're like, I would love to tap into that accountability. Where do I start? You have 2 resources right here. I'm happy to point whoever to a plethora of other resources, but start by finding someone that you trust that's going to be honest with you. Because like you said, there is a difference between authentically connecting and communication and trauma dumping. And what you don't want is you don't want to like just trauma dump. And that doesn't lead anywhere. It just leads to
Exactly.
more confusion. Whereas when you have somebody that you can genuinely like have those real, honest, non-biased conversations with that are going to lead you in that right direction, that's where you can start to grow in that way.
Amen. And to anybody who is listening who felt a type of way about those words trauma dump, you might not be trauma dumping. You might be. That's up to you. So if you feel that those two words made you feel some type of way, that's a check engine light. That's just telling you that's where to start right there.
Right? That's a great lens to look at. Absolutely. But yeah, like seek out, but there's no shame in therapy. There's no shame in coaching. Like, how can we, if we're not actively trying to learn, how can we expect to ever be better?
Exactly. We can't. And I love that you do group because I don't particularly do group. I do workshops once in a while.
My groups are all about how do we connect with others. Like we set
Mhm.
learning goals, we tap into authentic connection. It's 5 people who are going to come together and really focus on how can I practice that accountability? Like what does that look
Mhm.
like? How do I practice it? And how do I practice it in a safe community?
Everybody. I'm going to point, and I know that this is for all types, everyone out there. Don't take my words as being like, oh, this is only for this type. To me, that just went to my head being like fours and eights. Fours
Oh
and
yeah.
eights need this. And I don't mean that negatively, but I mean it in a way to enrich their lives
Yeah.
because fours and eights, they come and they often feel like they're disconnected. So if I have any fours and eights that come to me, I'm going to be for sure sending them your way. For sure.
Like if we don't do something for the first time, anytime we're trying something new, it's clunky, right? So like you want to learn to figure skate, you're going to go and you're going to bust your ass a couple times on the ice. That's just like part of it. Like it's the same thing with learning to connect authentically. It's the same thing with like learning to share your story and practicing that accountability. So if you're doing that for the first time, you want to do that in a space where it is trusted and safe and non-biased. That's the goal of my groups, is to facilitate that and provide that space for you to try it out.
I might just need to be joining it too myself. Not kidding. Yeah.
Well, this
No.
has been just the most fun. I've had the best time just chatting with you.
It's been great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for
So
being
much
here.
fun.
So much fun. But I guess like what's last question, like what's one thing you want to leave everybody with? Is there anything you want to share or say or encourage the audience?
Oh my gosh. One thing that I want people to take away, and I think it's the same thing that I said before, it's that you're in control. And to take that sentence and no matter how it makes you feel, sit with it.
Yeah.
Sit with it. If it makes you uncomfortable, if it makes you hate me, if it makes you hate Enneagram, if it makes you intrigued, if it excites you, all of those reactions are valid. I just want to figure out why. And you don't have to tell me why, but it'll help you and it'll help you regain that control. So,
All right. Well, this has been the best time. Thank you so much for being here, Candice. And we will see
thank you.
you next week. Have a great one.